Hello, Seiiti Arata. What can you do when you live with toxic people? Toxic people, I mean people who are always complaining, gossiping, lying, people who are unhappy, they overly criticize everything that you do. You must not tolerate abuse, first of all, because the more time you spend in a toxic relationship, the more you risk getting used to it and accepting treatment that is worse than what you actually deserve. And in some cases, your own happiness might fade, slowly suffocating you. This happens when deep down you actually like that toxic person and you feel, let's say, uncomfortable, ashamed of having a better life than theirs, a more higher level of happiness than them. Before we look specifically at what to do with these toxic people, we need to understand how attachment is an enemy of your happiness. The difficulty of moving forward has to do with our attachment to the past. There are different reasons for attachment. For example, if you're no longer with a loved one, you might believe that it's not right for you to feel happiness right now. This is why some people are criticized when, just after a breakup, they are very soon in a new romantic relationship, because it's socially expected that after a moment of a breakup or a loss, there is a need for a moment of retreat and recomposition. The problem is when that moment is longer then it would be healthy. So this is where attachment comes in. Attachment to the past makes it difficult for so many people to move on with life. Many people prefer to live in unhappiness than to displease society. And if you feel that this is your case, if you feel guilty about feeling happy, it might have to do with the stories that you're telling yourself in your head. You may be unhappy with the feeling of guilt, and guilt makes you think that you're not worthy of happiness. There is an irrational limiting belief that makes us feel enormous guilt and shame for being happy. And this belief states that it is wrong to be happy while so many other people are suffering right now. And a toxic person will also condemn you for being happy while they are suffering. So whether it is due to some internal limiting belief or some condemnation of a toxic person, somehow we believe that we do not deserve happiness. We feel this inexplicable guilt. When we notice differences between our level of happiness and that of other people, we can interpret this difference as if it would be an injustice. And this difference makes us uncomfortable. And we basically have two choices to resolve this imbalance. We can try to improve the lives of others, or we can make our own life worse. Let's now explain each one of these choices. The question is, what is trying to improve the lives of others? We can do our best to contribute to improving the lives of others by doing a good job, by contributing to social causes, by using compassion, empathy, patience, communication, action, solidarity. This is all about doing our part, within, of course, the reasonable limit, seeking to help the lives of others. Now, what is making our own lives worse, right? This is dealing with the dissonance, with the discomfort of perceiving this difference between our level of happiness and the levels of happiness of someone else by sabotaging our own lives, stifling our own happiness. So then now, without happiness, now I can approach the pain of other people, beating myself up. However, my suffering, my unhappiness was actually not helping to improve the lives of others. Sacrifice alone is worthless. It's like a self-mutilation, and it's an irrational choice that just lowers our own levels of happiness. The other person doesn't really care if you have sacrificed your levels of happiness. It's not really improving their life. If it's particularly somebody who wishes you well, that person actually wants you to be happy. But things are not always so simple, because if you're dealing with a toxic person, they will feel a certain pleasure seeing that now you are also suffering and you are less happy. Being around toxic people decreases your happiness. Imagine that you're going through a difficult time and now you're sad. Now imagine someone you love and that person has noticed your sadness and they start feeling sad because of compassion as well. How would you feel? This is probably not what you want. If you love that person, you want them to be happy. It is already unpleasant to be sad. It's even worse to know that other people are becoming sad because of our own sadness. We usually don't wish unhappiness for other people, right? Especially people we love. However, there are toxic people who will wish you unhappiness. The toxic person might be jealous or hateful of your happiness, and that is why they want to bring you down. Now, they don't always do this on purpose. Sometimes their negative influence happens unintentionally, without planning it. In some cases, it's just this strange feeling of having a company, of the other person not wanting to be alone in that sadness. So we need to be very careful to not let these people's unhappiness to contaminate our own happiness levels. Our compassion should motivate us. There is a virtue in delivering the best possible contribution to raising the quality of life of those who are around us. But we also have to be careful not to make the mistake of thinking that it is our duty to make our life worse in order for the other person to feel happy. You have to have compassion without sacrificing your own happiness. If the other person is getting happy with our pain, that's a little bit of a bad sign. It is necessary to be clear about the type of relationship that we have and the type of sacrifices that we're making. You can learn to feel happiness even if the people around you are not happy. Those who cannot be happy alone might be suffering from codependency. They may be more focused on others rather than themselves. If you really want to make a positive impact on the lives of others, just think. If a person is sad, are you better able to help that person by being happy or by becoming sad as well? Before you try to help others, you need to take care of yourself. If you're in a weakened emotional state, it will be more difficult for you to contribute to the lives of other people. To deal with a toxic person, you must know the limit that separates you from the other person. You've got also to understand that even when you do your best, the other person might still be unhappy. When you have done everything that is necessary, you must understand that you will never be able to save the other person, to change the other person. The emotions of someone else are the responsibility of that someone else. You've got to understand this boundary between who you are and who the other person is. And this is not selfishness. This is the main key to get rid of codependency with negative people. If you blur the boundary between who you are and who is the other person, you might feel that you need to be sad when the other person is feeling sad. You might think that you need to feel hate when the other person is feeling hate. Nothing could be more wrong than that. You are one person, the other person is another person. You've got to learn to be happy alone first. And this will help you. Not only you, but everyone else around you. First, take care of your own personal development. Be a healthy individual. And once you are a healthy individual, now you're more likely to have healthy relationships. We have many negative beliefs about happiness. I have just explained the problems of believing that you do not deserve happiness or believing that you must stifle your own happiness to somehow please and help others. These are just a few examples of limiting beliefs that make living with toxic people even more difficult. If you associate happiness with something unwanted, it is very likely that you'll find it difficult to be happy. Let me give you 2 common examples of negative beliefs about happiness. Some people believe that it's important to remain dissatisfied in order to have the motivation to seek improvements in life. These people think that being happy can make a person, lazy without motivation because they are already happy, right? So they really don't need to do anything. They don't really need to work hard to achieve anything. This is kind of a misinterpretation of Steve Jobs' famous message that we must stay hungry. In other words, that we should not be satisfied quickly. Happiness does not make us lazy. On the contrary, happiness makes us more productive, more successful. We're more creative, and we're more likely to do things right and well when we're happy. Another negative belief is the one that associates happiness to becoming a little bit too naive, like a silly person alienated from what happens in the world, who's smiling all the time at everything. That's not the best way to interpret this. The fact that you're happy does not alienate you from the suffering of others, of the problems of the world. Instead, when you're happy, you're more likely to be able to help than when you're feeling sad or angry or out of control. You can refuse to be contaminated by the other person. Don't accept provocations. You cannot control the toxic person's behavior, but you can control your response to the provocations of the other person. And it is essential to learn to observe when your ego is hampering your decision making. For example, imagine a toxic person who lives with you and is unhappy at work. She will ask you for some advice on how to do better at her work or to get a better job. You encourage that person to distribute resumes and to go to networking events. And then that person says, oh, come on, what a silly idea. I hate participating in these networking events. It's so disgusting to be forcing myself to go and meet people, to find a new job. I'm not going to do it. Then, okay, in this example, you notice that you're starting to feel some anger. And this anger comes from your ego, which was just offended. The ego is telling you that you must prove that your idea is right, your idea is good. Because in your case, you always do networking to improve your professional results, and it works for you. So your ego feels criticized and needs to prove that you are right and the other person is wrong. And you can watch all these emotions happening inside of you. And then you can realize that the toxic person, let's call it like that, just has a different opinion from you. This allows you to calm down. And maybe you can even change the subject. You can go away. But let's further continue with this example. Imagine that after a few days, that toxic person excitedly tells you that she went to a congress in her area, she met some representatives of another company, and then she was interviewed. And she's so happy because it was her friend William who suggested going to some different types of congresses. Now, at this time, again, the ego might get irritated. You feel angry. You want to rub in the face of that person that before this William, whomever, gave the genius idea of going to a congress, you had already suggested before of going to networking events, and you were criticized. Your ego feels rejected, as if the ideas coming from you are worthless. Only William is hurt. Just watching your ego voices, wishing for a confrontation, you can already decide with more tranquility, with more awareness. What do you really want? Do you want to have a conflict? Do you want to be reminding the other person that it was you who suggested that idea in the first place? Or you just want to be happy because the other person is doing well? All of this will help you to be more calm. So learning to observe yourself is an essential key to refusing to become contaminated in your relationships. Our decision making is often based on limiting beliefs. If you start to believe that you need to stifle your own happiness out of compassion, there are several wrong premises that need to be corrected. Some of these limiting beliefs have their origins in toxic people who want to put you down. Perhaps they might not even be aware of what they're doing, that they are affecting your well-being. In our happiness course, we have a series of practical exercises to reframe the way you live with the other people and mainly with yourself. You can visit arata.se/happiness to start your classes right now in a quick and practical way. There is an important part of the dynamic of living with toxic people, which is to know the limits of who you are and who the other person is. You can receive all kinds of provocation, just don't accept them. Keep your ego in check so you don't take offense seriously and easily. One way to do this is to increase your level of awareness and mindfulness, and we're going to do all of that together in a happiness course.